Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, 22nd chapter, text number 34. Nishnatam Yogamayasu Munim Swayambhuvam Manum Yada Brahmshaitum Bhoga Nashekur Bhagavat Param. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. Thus Swayambhuva Manu was a saintly king. Although absorbed in material happiness, he was not dragged to the lowest grade of life, for he always enjoyed his material happiness in a Krishna conscious atmosphere. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The kingly happiness of material enjoyment generally drags one to the lowest grade of life, namely degradation to animal life, because of unrestricted sense enjoyment. But Swayambhuva Manu was considered as good as a saintly sage because the atmosphere created in his kingdom and home was completely Krishna conscious. The case is similar with the conditioned souls in general. They have come into this material life for sense gratification, but if they are able to create a Krishna conscious atmosphere as depicted here or as prescribed in revealed scriptures by temple worship and household deity worship, then in spite of their material enjoyment, they can make advancement in pure Krishna consciousness without a doubt. At the present moment, modern civilization is too much attached to the material way of life or sense gratification. Therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement can give the people in general the best opportunity to utilize their human life in the midst of material enjoyment. Krishna consciousness does not stop them in their propensity for material enjoyment, but simply regulates their habits in the life of sense enjoyment. In spite of their enjoying the material advantages, they can be liberated in this very life by practicing Krishna consciousness by the simple method of chanting the holy names of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport.
So this is a very interesting verse and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Very fundamental paradigms of enjoyment of the living entity is revealed in these purports. Much contrary to the common sense understanding of spirituality, where every enjoyment is seen as poison. So, in essence, in this purport, Prabhupada is saying, and then we will discuss that, details of that. Prabhupada is saying, in essence, that material enjoyment is not against Krishna consciousness as such, as long as it is regulated according to the principles of Dharma, according to the principles of Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness does not stop them from their propensity for material enjoyment. So Prabhupada is saying here a very revolutionary statement. At the present moment, modern civilization is too much attached to material way of life or sense gratification. Therefore, the Krishna conscious movement can give people in general the best opportunity to utilize their human life in the midst of material enjoyment. That's why I said, as contrary to the common understanding that spirituality means denial of enjoyment. Let us try to understand this a little deeper from the point of Vaishnava philosophy. The purpose of existence, as revealed in the scriptures, is Anandamayobhyasat, is for Ananda. is for pleasure. So pleasure is something that, pleasure and varieties of pleasure is something that it cannot be unconstitutional. Because that is the objective of existence. Krishna has brought forth this existence for expanding the Ananda. According to his scheme of things, he creates this material world, he injects jivas into this material energy, and creation, maintenance, annihilation happens. In the course of maintenance, annihilation, creation, the living entities are going through different material variegatedness of rasa or happiness, pleasure in this material world. That is very apparent because everybody in this material, every living entity is after pleasure, is after happiness. So it's a common thread. You see that there is a nature of the entire, not only human species, animal species, everywhere. The goal is Ananda. Because that is the way the Lord has created. But then, the higher purpose, if you see, when you come to human form of life, you get an opportunity to understand that there is good enjoyment and there is bad enjoyment. You can discriminate. Just like we have good food and bad food. Both may be tasty. Bad food also may be tasty. But when it goes to the stomach, it becomes bad. You can have sweet poisons also. Is it not? So both you can say it is tasty food. But one is good food, one is bad food. In the same way, there is good enjoyment and bad enjoyment. So in the material world, the living entities are churned through 84 lakh species of life. Brahma Loka Punaravarthana Arjuna, up and down the cycle. This is Lord's amazing creation. His super intelligent creation. God is a person. He has created this material energy, material existence with a higher purpose to increase the pleasure for him and us. From his point of view, we are him only. Everything is him only. We are his expansions. So we as Jiva, as his expansions in the material world, we are constitutionally meant for a different quality of enjoyment, which you never get in this material world. The enjoyments in this material world, whatever enjoyment we have in this material world are sample enjoyments. They are not regular enjoyment, or they are experientially they are sample. Nobody will be satisfied with samples. Suppose I give you every day sample food. You will never be satisfied with sample food. You want full food, isn't it? So in the material world there is enjoyment, but it is sample enjoyment. But so the living entity is not satisfied with this sample enjoyment because constitutionally he is meant for full enjoyment, regular enjoyment. So this enjoyment in this material world is sample enjoyment, experientially created, It is created, it is experientially true, but existentially false, because this enjoyment is not eternal. Or this enjoyment is not coming from, is not real enjoyment. Why it is not real enjoyment, we'll discuss. Enjoyment consists of two things. Sensational pleasures, is it not? Our senses. And loving exchanges, loving relationship. Relational pleasure and sensational pleasure. And also we have something called happiness. These are all even relational. Some relational exchange happens. For a moment you feel very good about this person's kindness, etc. That is relational happiness. Relational pleasure. You put a rasgulla on your tongue, you get sensation. It's called sensational pleasure. So you have got sensation pleasure, you got relational pleasure you have got. Now over on that there is something called happiness. Happiness is more connected to lasting thing, existential thing. For instance, if somebody has got wealth, then you say he is a happy man. Somebody has got health, you say he is a happy man. You don't say he's got pleasure of wealth. Very happy. Health, wealth, etc., etc. These are happiness. Or if he's got a continuous, unfettered source of relational pleasure, unfettered source of sensational pleasure, then he will also say, I am happy. He'll say, I got a good wife. That is happiness in life. Why? Because not only she gives one's loving exchange, she is very kind, always taking care, always. So an always pleasure converts to happiness. So that is all man is seeking, happiness and pleasure. Man also seeks power and knowledge. Power and knowledge is also, it is actually secondary happiness. Power and happiness is a means for rasa, is a means for happiness and pleasure. Ananda is a means for ananda. Because these two things facilitate happiness and pleasure. So ultimately man is existing not for power or pleasure, or power or knowledge. He is existing for rasa. Entire creation is geared towards this. Sat, Chit and Ananda. Tat Sat is power, Chit is knowledge, Ananda. You're moving towards Ananda. So this, when the philosophy of Vaishnavism is about Ananda or enjoyment and varieties of enjoyment. To deny enjoyment, to abrogate the role of enjoyment in existence of an individual is a completely wrong understanding of spirituality. Vaishnavism is not against enjoyment. Because if you see, when you go to the spiritual world also, you need a vocabulary to understand the enjoyment there. If you are not sampled, how can you get enjoyment there? So in the material world, through 84 lakh species of life, you are sampled. All kinds of. But here you get frustrated. There is no fulfillment. Sukham is very tucham. So by living entity starts thinking. The purpose of material creation you can see. The purpose of material creation is The living entity can choose, of course, he can choose to, question, and especially in the human form of life. That is why this human form of life is very, very, very rare. And the facility is very rare, because this is where you can ask this question: why I don't have fulfillment of enjoyment in this life? Nobody has fulfillment of enjoyment. Why fulfillment? Non-fulfillment means there is a deficit between your expectation and what you get. So in the depth of your heart, the soul is always expecting another quality of enjoyment. And here there is a frustration in your attempt to enjoy. So Maya is Krishna's servant. So Maya is continuously churning the living entities in this material world. And finally the living entities get frustrated. And they question, Atato Brahma Jijnasa. First they question about my existence itself, why I am dying, where I came from, what is this? First is the question about the Sat. Where is it? I am existing, where am I? Where did I come from? Do I die? Do I exist? What is it? So the inquiry about Sat begins. When the living entity is faced with the temporary nature of everything in this material world, including life. So that is when the living entity starts inquiring. And look at the grand scheme of things. So beautiful is the arrangement of the Lord to churn the living entities. The Lord is seated in every living entity's heart as Paramatma. Now he enlightens the living entity from within the heart through the spiritual master, takes one to the spiritual master, and he enlightens the living entity about positive spiritual enjoyment in association with Krishna. Before that happens, before one comes to a spiritual master, Paramatma will guide the living entity through the principles of, will reveal the principles of dharma, so that the living entity can enjoy material enjoyment on the principles of dharma. Material enjoyment. And that is what is being described here. This is the stage of, Swayambhuva Manu. He is experiencing, he's not about spiritual enjoyment, he's talking about material enjoyment. So in the material world, he is going through material enjoyment as enjoined in the Shastras, means it is a regulated way of enjoying. So when there is respect for Shastra and one undertakes material enjoyment, or one is absorbed in material enjoyment as per the Shastras, and that itself is a respect for the Lord, that itself is a connection with the Lord. It is not disconnected. Such a person thinks that this is enjoined in the scriptures and it is given to me by the Lord, therefore I enjoy. This is the attitude of that enjoyment. The attitude of that enjoyment, Krishna conscious material enjoyment, is not that I grab whatever comes into my purview and I enjoy. There may be so many things that may come under my purview, just like the king. Under his purview, anything he can get and he can enjoy. That is why Prabhupada is saying the kingly happiness of material enjoyment generally drags on to the lowest grade of life. See, in the material world here in Kali Yuga, everybody is starved of material enjoyment. So if some nice arrangement comes, then the devotee also sometimes says, this is Krishna's arrangement. I didn't go after it, it's Krishna's arrangement. The point is, yes, it is Krishna's arrangement through Maya. Maya's arrangement. So you cannot base something to decide to enjoy something on what comes and falls on your lap. Maya will also come and fall on your lap. Krishna's arrangement. What comes of its own accord, I shall enjoy. No. There are the principles of dharma. That's where Krishna comes into picture. Obedience to Krishna, obedience to Krishna's law. By then the living entity is a pious living entity. Pious living entity means he knows that the Lord is running this material world. The Lord has a purpose. I am a small living entity and I have my journey to perform in this body. And there are guidelines, do's and don'ts that are given by the Lord himself in the code book of living. So I shall follow those principles and I shall become liberated, because that is what is assured by Krishna. If one leads a dharmic life, it facilitates him towards liberation. So material enjoyment per se, when it is taken up in the spirit of dharma, then it need not go against Krishna consciousness. That is the point. That itself does not make you advance in Krishna consciousness. That burns away your karma. But what takes you towards Krishna consciousness is, as Prabhupada says, in spite of their enjoying the material advantages, they can be liberated in this very life by practicing Krishna consciousness, by simple method of chanting the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, by regulated enjoyment, what happens when you chant Hare Krishna also, by the mercy of the holy name, slowly the attitude of enjoyment of the living entity changes. His attitude next, see, from bad enjoyment to good enjoyment he goes. When you unrestrictedly enjoy like an animal, it's bad enjoyment. Animal is not having bad enjoyment. If the human being unrestrictedly enjoys like animal, then that is bad enjoyment for him. For animal, that enjoyment is not bad for him. It is in his evolutionary stage, it is good. But as far as human being, when he goes to the animal kind of enjoyment, it is bad enjoyment for him. Then, after being a good enjoyer in this material world, then and associating with, devotional service of chanting Hare Krishna, the worship of the Lord, recognizing the Lord, and all those kind of things. When one starts absorbing, giving his time for those things, there is purification of this good enjoyment also. That's when virakti or total detachment from material enjoyment happens. So again, enjoyment does not end. This is the point. Our enjoyment is getting purified. Now it is called transcendental enjoyment. Bad enjoyment, good enjoyment, transcendental enjoyment. So what is transcendental enjoyment? Transcendental enjoyment, the attitude of enjoyment is changed. You don't seek enjoyment any longer. Because in the material world, when you seek, that is called lust. Any material enjoyment, there is lust. Like it's a kingly happiness of material enjoyment is lust only. But Krishna himself says, lust according to regulatory principles is me. So that is one level of enjoyment. But it doesn't end there. We start asking, where is eternal enjoyment? Where is eternal relationship? Where is eternal existence? All these things rise up in our mind. And those things don't rise up unless you become a punyatma. That means unless you have a punya life, unless you have a life according to dharma, those thoughts don't arise. So therefore, Prabhupada says, chant Hare Krishna and follow 4 regulatory principles. So following the 4 regulatory principles and chanting Hare Krishna slowly will purify our platform of enjoyment, our attitude of enjoyment. From seeking enjoyment, one's attitude goes to receiving enjoyment that Krishna gives. That means once you understand that actually all my enjoyment is in relationship with the Supreme Lord, directly or indirectly, it is by the will of the Lord. Becomes a devotee of the Lord means then he is under the care of the Lord. That is another prakriti, dhaiva prakriti. Another energy takes over. Another energy is influencing that devotee. Slowly. That is when one becomes a pure devotee. Mahatmanas tumam partha. He becomes a Mahatma. He moves from the material energies influence to spiritual energies influence. And spiritual energies influences, the characteristic of spiritual energies influences, it is lustless enjoyment. Lustless enjoyment is enjoyment. Krishna's mercy, Krishna's given enjoyment is called lustless enjoyment. Every living entity has got connection with the Lord. And the Lord personally relates, that is bhakti, with each living entity. And when the bhakti is pure, the living entity does not like any enjoyment which is not prasadam of the Lord. Not only tongue prasadam, everything is prasadam of the Lord. And the Lord personally makes the devotees happy. Lord personally gives pleasure to the devotees. And this goes on and on and on, and that's the whole spiritual existence. Spiritual existence is relational pleasure with Krishna, loving exchanges with Krishna, being protected, sheltered eternally by Krishna. There are millions of living entities, just like there are millions of living entities in this material world, there are millions of living entities in the Vaikuntha Loka. They are all enjoying transcendental eternal pleasure, which is Krishna conscious pleasure. The Lord wants to share the joy, share the enjoyment. Anandamaya Abhyasa. So the relationship between the devotee and the Lord in the spiritual world is ever expanding for every devotee. You can't enter there if you are seeking after pleasure. You can enter there if you are seeking after giving pleasure to Vishnu, Narayana, Krishna. That is a common core of everybody in the spiritual world, everything in the spiritual world. Everybody in the spiritual world is to give pleasure to Krishna. That giving pleasure to a person is called love. Seeking pleasure for oneself is called lust. So just see, ultimately, the living entity may experience enjoyment. But that enjoyment may not be lust. Is not lust. A pure devotee's enjoyment is not lust. It is loving exchange with the Lord. So the constitution, the living entity is meant for rasa. So under the guidance of the spiritual master, who is a representative of Krishna, the pure representative of Krishna, which is also an arrangement of the Lord himself in this material world, he sends great devotees. He sends Narada, he sends all the great devotees, and the Bhagavatam is continuously living entities are being directed and assisted and encouraged to, go for this positive, transcendental, constitutional enjoyment of devotional service, pure devotional service. So this way that the whole purpose of material existence itself is. No other philosophy explains in this world why this existence is there, why this suffering is there. If God is there, he should have not had any suffering. Yeah, right. That is there in the spiritual world. Go there. Go there. There is an existence like that. Go there. But why not here? They'll ask, why not here? Why not here? Because he is a transcendental autocrat. He has decided to churn all of you and take you there. No question to be asked on that. He is the Supreme Lord. He has expanded into Jivatmas. He has expanded into Paramatma. He has expanded for his great grand scheme of enjoyment. So unless you see the purpose of the Lord in this existence, material existence, everywhere Krishna's purpose is there. That's in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, whatever way finally one follows, they are following my way. That means, okay, you got a choice. You want to take this route or this route, but all the routes are fixed by me. All the routes are fixed by me, because the routes are fixed by me in a way. If you go this route, finally you will come to this route. Finally you will come to this route. Finally you have to come to me. If you want your constitutional enjoyment, you may go this route. You may have to come to me. Everyone is following my path, Krishna says. It's a universal statement, Krishna says. It's not a statement of bhakti. Statement of bhakti is everybody, those who want to voluntarily follow the Lord, that is bhakti. Those who want to follow the Lord through the three modes of material nature, not those who want to. Those who don't want that, they are forced to follow the three modes of material nature. The living entity is always a servant. Either he serves the external energy or he serves the internal energy. He serves the internal energy. So that is the attitude. And what is the difference in these two? To exist there, you need another attitude of enjoyment. To exist here, you have another attitude of enjoyment. The attitude of enjoyment changes everything. And it is not easy to change, because that has to change at the soul level. You have to hear the pure devotees who have that attitude. By association of Vaishnavas, by association of pure devotees, that attitude, that new attitude comes into our consciousness, replacing the old attitude. And when the new attitude, and when there is enjoyment, experience of enjoyment through new attitude, that is really transcendental enjoyment, that is actual enjoyment for the soul. Whereas in the material enjoyment, it is only an identified pleasure. It is not for the soul. Just like when you watch a movie, there also you feel pleasure. But it is not, you are not involved in it. Only your mind is involved in it. It is an identified pleasure. So all pleasures in this material world are identified pleasures. Not my pleasure. I identify with the false ego. Then I think that, I am a man, and then I enjoy as a man. So automatically it's identified pleasure, not your real pleasure. So in the entire material world, beautiful creation through the element of false ego, the Lord has created this. So nobody ultimately, when he experiences real enjoyment, then there is no more identified pleasure. There is real pleasure. Then, when that attitude comes, when that realization comes, the devotee, what is the stupid identified pleasure? When I have my real pleasure, why I should have identified pleasure? When I have my real pleasure, I am a servant of Krishna and I can serve Krishna even in this material world. Why I should go for identified pleasure? It is not befitting to have any identified pleasures. So every identified pleasure is, that is what Krishna says, free from false ego. False ego means there is an agenda. Each false ego has an agenda of pleasure. Relational pleasure, sensational pleasure, happiness pleasure, it has got. So experience, that's what Krishna also says in the Bhagavad Gita, that the taste for sense objects does not go. You can go to a higher taste. Why? Because constitutionally, yes, we have senses. If we have senses, then we have taste for sense objects. Constitutionally. Only we have to spiritualize and feed our senses with Krishna Prasadam. Krishna Prasadam is a result of loving exchange of the Lord. For instance, we take prasadam for our tongue. It is a mercy of the Lord. That is the greatest thought that the Lord In this material world, himself is giving his remnants for purification's sake. So kind. So it's a loving exchange. Love of the Lord. By love of the Lord, love of the spiritual master, love of the pure devotee, therefore we are getting prasadam. In our conditioned state, whatever mercy that Prabhupada, Krishna is giving, one should understand it is the love of Prabhupada and Krishna to sustain us. Not that we are, even in our conditioned life, we are not having any enjoyment. We are having enjoyment. We are taking good prasadam. We don't torture our body. All these things, these are not against Krishna consciousness. Not against Krishna consciousness. Yukta Vairagya, not dry Vairagya. So Swayambhuva Manu, so therefore these statements have to be understood properly in the bigger perspective of how, yes, you can be Krishna consciousness and have good enjoyment. You have to give up bad enjoyment. Enjoyments that are restricted or which are prohibited. For instance, let's say conjugal relationship. Krishna says within the marriage, then that is good relationship, good enjoyment. If anybody is seeking any relationship which is contrary to the Shastras, scriptures, then that becomes a big hindrance in spiritual life. And one is not making progress, but one is falling down. So enjoyment, rasa is permitted, but permitted, you have to be very strict as per is the scriptures permitting, is it as per dharma. Then otherwise you're drinking poison. As it told, bad enjoyment is poison. Bad enjoyment is poison. Lust, as allowed by Krishna, is not poison. And such lust accompanied by devotional service will lead to pure devotional service. Lustless enjoyment. Hare Krishna. Any questions? Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai.